I think we are live. Yeah, it's showing me live.
Ah,
Cool. So, guys, we are live. Um, I think we are waiting for Priyam to join. Priyam, are you there? Yes. There you go. Cool. We are live. I just quickly checked. We are all good on like all the different channels, LinkedIn. We are live streaming right now on LinkedIn, on YouTube, and Riverside right itself. So guys, just be mindful of the words that we use. Okay, cool. All right. I think, sorry, I think we are having a small issue. Gina and Clara, I think you joined, welcome to the call, but I think you joined the wrong link, in my opinion.
Oh,
oh no.
Yeah, I think you joined the host rather than the guest or the audience.
okay. I will log out.
Yeah, because otherwise you will get recorded. That's the only issue. I think if you joined as a guest or something, you'll get recorded.
Okay.
Yeah, but if you joined as an audience, then it should be okay. And same thing with Candence.
I joined as a guest. Is that okay?
Yeah, your guest is fine. Right. Okay, cool. I think we are good. I think Rijan is joining as a host as well. Okay.
Logistics.
Yeah, I think it's just a wrong link. Rijan, would you mind dropping out and joining as an audience? Yeah. For some reason, audience are joining up as a guest. It's all right. I think we can carry on. It's going to get recorded. It's going to live stream there. So I think it should be all right. Okay, cool. All right, guys. Welcome to this podcast. I'm the founder of NotchUp, and today I'm joined with a lovely guest, very incredible panel that I happen to discuss key topics quite a few times now, actually. And this is a new season of the podcast that we are doing at the NotchUp. Last year, we done about 12 guests, 12 episodes, which was more engineering focused. But this time around, we're going to mix both engineering and the HR as part of our webinars and the podcast and everything else so that we can bring perspective from both the sides. Today, I've got three wonderful guests, Anita, yourself, Matt, and Priyam, with a range of experience from startup to scale up, building all sorts of different teams, in-house, external contractors, freelancers, and all the mix that you can imagine. But I'll let them do all the talking. So why don't we start with first our guests introducing themselves? Why don't we start with you, Anita, first?
Well, I'm located here in Silicon Valley and been in the Silicon Valley startup ecosystem for a very long time. I've got about 25 years in talent acquisition, recruiting, and people strategy. And this is an interesting topic, especially right now as AI is not just emerging, it's been emerged. It's hotter than hot right now, and really taking a stake into how we're leading our people in talent acquisition efforts.
Yeah. Matt, would you like to go next?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me and excited to see everybody. So I'm Matt Karp. I've been running a HR consulting firm for the past 2.5 years, mostly focused on AI and how to bring it into different companies and use cases. And before that, I was head of HR for some startups, and excited to be here to talk about everything AI.
Yeah, and last but not very least, Priyam, welcome to as a panelist on this one. You have some big news to share. Would love to hear that. But why don't you start introducing yourself?
Absolutely. Hi, my name is Priyam Jain. I've been in the tech kind of Silicon Valley area for the last about 8 to 10 years as well, starting off kind of in the agency recruiting space and then been part of small startups, some very unicorn startups as well. My first one, I guess my bread and butter really lies in scaling teams and building out processes. So I was a second technical recruiter at my first company. Last company, which was a very small autonomy company, I was leading recruiting, people, HR, so kind of being that people team lead there. And now most recently I've joined Applied Intuition as an IC because it is a very large company, really hoping to make some changes here and scale the company. So that's my thing. In the last also 6 months or so, I've started my own community group called AI in HR and Recruiting, which is really, again, kind of very similar to what we're doing here. We try to bring industry leaders or just, individuals like ourselves to talk about how AI is really impacting the people team space, specifically for HR, ops, and just things like that. So I'm really, really glad to be here, kind of continuing that topic.
Cool, wonderful. Thanks a lot, everybody. Now, there are a range of topics we're going to cover today. But generally, me being a founder within the HR tech, I'm not sure whether I'm at HR tech or not. I started mainly as an engineering productivity, and eventually it started overlapping with the HR space, right? But operating within this HR space, generally you hear in the market that is crowded space. That's like tools and things available for everything that you can imagine, right? But we still think that the HR tech overall is broken, right? What do we mean by that, right? Let's start with you, Anita.
Well, in general, my take is that there's a lot of tools and we've overcomplicated things, and when things break, then we need to pull in the humans to fix it. And there's a lot of things wrong with the process, but I don't really feel like it's serving like where the true frictions are. It's like I almost want to say we need to get back to the baseline of why, what the Y Combinator preaches. Let's build something delightful. And with that is starting with something useful, but it should also be kind of fun to use. And we've moved away from that, but it's typically we have a lot of these great tools on the market that are getting a lot of controversy in the market because they're also kind of imploding. There's a lot of bias in these tools and things going haywire. And right now we all talk about AI is going to take our jobs, but they're not, because they're actually imploding. It's not really actually building trust, but there's lies. I think the problem is that we're trusting these systems more than the humans, and we're not actually serving the real issue of fear. And the real fear is, what if we mishire? Well, we need to get back to the baseline of how do we resolve the feeling of fear, emotions, and that's where people and talent could really be leveraged.
Okay, cool. Priyam, anything that you're saying?
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I feel like there's just so many tools out there, especially now being in this space and doing a lot more research on it. They're kind of solving for one small problem versus looking at a larger picture to solve for. All these AI sourcing tools, we'll find the best candidate. Well, then I go and talk to these account execs or founders, and I'm like, well, how are you solving this problem from an AI perspective of now everyone is using ChatGPT or Gemini to really align their resumes with keywords, and now the sourcing tool is not effective. So it's not we really have to look at the larger picture that we're trying to solve for. Keywords is not going to get us that best candidate. There's a lot of other attributes as part of being in talent acquisition that are just as important. And I'll give you an example of that is because currently, I literally am completing week 3 at Applied. So it's still early on, but our first, all of my recruiters that are doing first screen, we're not assessing for technical. We're assessing for, are you a culture add? Are you going to be a good fit? Are you ready for the environment that, is applied? And I think most people are assessing for that in first calls. So how is the sourcing tool assessing for that? So that's why I say hiring tech is broken, because there's no hiring tech. The entire concept of recruiting is currently broken. Yeah. And I'll let Matt add to that.
Yeah.
What a segue. Everything's broken.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Everything.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard not to agree with both of you. And there's so many tools out there. And from an HR perspective, you're getting hit on LinkedIn every day with, hey, there's this new tool. Check it out. Check out this new AI thing. It's going to save you X number of hours. You're going to save this money. And it could be true, but often I'm already using 5 other tools that are sort of limping me along. So to add another one is actually going to add a lot of work to my plate. The other piece that I really agree with and think is interesting is ultimately what we're trying to do is reduce risk when we're hiring in talent acquisition. And people are scared these days. Companies are really nervous about who to hire. They're not expanding as much as they were in 2021 or so. So people are risk adverse, and then we add in these tools. And what I've found, I don't know if Priyam or Anita, if you've seen this, but I'll get all the way through with a candidate, and they'll be perfectly aligned to the job description, and someone will come in, maybe an investor will say, oh, by the way, I got a buddy that you should interview. And they'll hire that buddy no matter what my talent system said, because they trust their investor. They say, you know what, this is the safer thing for me to do, is to hire that person. Right. So it's a really fascinating topic of like, is it tech? Is it human emotions? How do we deal with all this?
Yeah, there are quite an interesting thing about deciding tech. I think from my observation, I mean, relatively newer in this space compared to you guys. But I made 2 observations, right? Some of the HR tech tools, they started offering one specific feature, and then they eventually grew to like a full HR platform. Like Rippling, for example, is a great example. Deal, for example, for that matter. They eventually became big. And now they're trying to do everything when it comes to HR stack. And that's where you start losing that, hey, is this tool even more relevant anymore? Okay.
Yeah, let's not get started on Rippling and Deal. I was going to say, I saw Matt smirking a little bit there. But I think the problem, I haven't really worked with Deal as much, because I think they started, correct me if I'm wrong, I think they came after Rippling. I'm not sure who started first or who came first, but I won't get into the legalities of what's going on in the real world around it. But for me, I think the biggest thing about when it comes to like HR, and I'm calling HR tech, including talent acquisition, as a part of it. I think people ops and people is the new word. So, but I think the thing is, like, harping on Matt's comment, you can only also have so many tools. Like, you can't have like 10 different tools and then try to incorporate and then implement and then integrate with each other, so they're pulling data, and then if they're not seamlessly integrated with each other, your data is going to be so skewed that you're looking for anything, right? So it doesn't really solve our problem when it's not integrating with all of the other tools that we're working with. So like having 2 or 3 big tools is what leaders are looking for. They don't want a gamut of like 10, 11, 12 tools. And I think the thing that happens is a lot of them I think the newer, smaller companies are doing this a little bit better, where they're doing a product-led growth versus like the sales-led growth. Like they have a product they can really talk about, versus, I think, in my opinion, and I've worked with Rippling before as well, and currently am as a user, it's very sales-led. Like, hey, this is what we can do, what can we do, what can do, and then when you get in the product, those features don't exist, and then it's like, okay, well, when is that actually getting rolled out? So like the sales-led growth from an HR perspective isn't ideal, because we need this now. Actually, we needed this yesterday. So giving to us in 6 months, like, it's not going to help us when my hiring is currently broken, right? So yeah. I
want to add to that is Rippling looks really pretty. It looks really, really pretty. But I'm going to go back to, it needs to be useful. And there's like, if you go to the other end, there's an applicant tracking system called Lever. Very useful, but not pretty. Right. Yeah. But Lever has gotten very, very far because they have been very intuitive and useful. And it's hire manager friendly, which speaks the language to the TA and people ops world. Right. So there's something to be said for that. Is like, yes, you want it to be pretty. I do favor a little color. Yeah. But at the end of the day, color is optional. I want it to be useful, because at the end of the day, I'm tying my talent strategy to the revenue and the business model of the organization.
Exactly.
Cool. You know what? That's an interesting observation, and something I was going to say. The other side of, like, Rippling and Deal doing everything, you have this old school, like, Oracle, HR, SAP, ERP, and all those stuff, right? Which is very old school, very clunky, maybe great product about 20, 30 years ago, but they're stuck in that. They have managed to get the enterprise client. They're deployed there, and their pace of innovation is fairly slow, right? But now the companies or employers don't want to change them because they have invested in it. They have all their employee or people data within those systems, and if they want to deploy a new tool, they'll be like, yeah, but you got to work with this tool, the old tool, and that is integration is very, very difficult with those tools, right? So now there's a dilemma, in my opinion, from employer as well as from TA perspective, that maybe the newer tools may get you a better experience and a better outcome, but you may not be able to use that. And you are forced to use something which is clunky, which worked 20 years ago, it still works, but not in the newer context of what's happening around you.
Let me give you an example of what you're talking about. Is there's LinkedIn Recruiter, and while I love LinkedIn Recruiter, it's also getting very pricey, and it doesn't have enough of the features that I want to see, right? But then I use something like Seekout for sourcing, and I love Seekout, and it rides right on top of LinkedIn Recruiter, so I can use on top of each other. But at the end of the day, when I only have so many dollars in my budget, I'm always going to pick LinkedIn Recruiter, and Seekout has to go, right? Which is unfortunate.
Right.
When you could force a company to migrate everything to one platform, such as a Rippling or a Gusto or a HiBob, whatnot, then they're going to be invested, and everything else has to sit on top of it. In fact, like a single sign-on is going to be very, very appealing to us. But that doesn't even exist anymore, right? And so that's really imperative. But anything over and above that has to sit on top or integrates on top, that's going to be optional. And when those buy decisions come about, then we're needing to replace what we already have. It's not something that's going to be added on. So if I already have GEM, I'm going to need to no longer want to work with GEM to add Seekout, if that makes sense.
Right. Well, I use GEM currently, and I think GEM is probably one of the better tools from sequencing and, building projects and really getting nitty gritty in terms of like tagging and from a CRM perspective, like you can really go back and do a lot if you import your candidates correctly into it, but no one does that. So you're not really, sometimes we don't understand the capacity of some of these tools and what they can really offer. But the other example to that, like, Anita gave a great example from a talent perspective, but like from an HR perspective, like Workday does great things from an HRIS. It's great for larger companies, but I don't want to use the talent side of Workday, and it's doing something good for a reason. It has its own clunkiness and problems, but from an HRIS and data perspective, like it's good. And you can do so much with it in terms of all of your benefits and policies and anything that you need to do from HR admin. It's a great tool versus some of these other tools that are still catching up.
Cool. Right. I want to move a little bit in a slightly different direction, right? AI obviously is making waves everywhere, all aspects of everything that we do, whether it's engineering, ops, marketing, whatever, you pick it, and there is some kind of AI tools are out there, right? Now, with AI, mathematically, is a mathematical system, is a rule-based programming eventually. And you might have heard terms called hallucinations in AI, which means the output that is produced by AI may not be accurate, right? Now, from HR perspective or hiring perspective, with all the diversity, inclusion, discrimination and everything else going on, what do you think? How do you deal with these biases, first of all, that AI could introduce into your process, right? What you should be looking out for? Anyone want to take it first?
I'll let Matt go first at this one.
Yeah, this one's really fun. Ultimately, what I always advise is to have a human at the end. So who is responsible for the output? You can use AI as a tool, but you got to have somebody there saying, you know what, I vetted this, I'm responsible, and we're going from there. That's what I've been advising all my clients. The other piece is I love AI systems that link to original documents. So the AI will say, you know, hey, I'm AI, I make mistakes, and you can have that at the bottom, and you can put in the employee handbook, and it can ask questions about the employee handbook, and then it'll link to that section where the employee will be responsible for actually going and being like, all right, what does the language actually say? Is it accurate? So the AI tools are starting to get better with that. It took about a year or so for that linking to come in. But now I trust them a lot more because you're able to verify where the information's coming from a little bit easier.
See, I think that there lies the problem is that as a society, we're trusting AI a little bit more than the human, and it should actually be the reverse. And let's use the Workday example. There's an outstanding case right now on discrimination and age discrimination and color. And it's been out since 2024, I believe. And it's a reoccurring issue. But Workday actually takes no responsibility of it. They're claiming that this is the system and the humans need to be responsible for the outcome. And I feel like there is actually a storyline there that we really need to hang on, is that we're using these systems as if it's the solution, and it's not. It's part of the workflow. It's part of the system. And we do still need the humans to be doing the checks and balances. But if we're putting all of our trust in the systems before the humans, then that there is the issue. And we're putting trust in systems that are still learning, to be honest with you, because these models are still learning. But these models are built by the humans. And really what we need to start to embrace is recognizing that perfection does not exist. We need to normalize imperfection, and that we're going to have these things arise, and be a little bit smarter about it.
Yeah.
Agreed. I think they need to be a valuable resource add versus there's always going to be human oversight, and I don't think we're in the near term. I feel like I can't say like that's going to be the case. Obviously in the future I can see that happening, but they need to be a value resource add where it's like a human that can do the job well without needing a lot of oversight. Whereas currently I don't feel like that's the case. And I'm just adding to Anita's point in what we talked about even earlier from a sourcing tool perspective, like we always have to make sure like who is getting stack ranked, who is like a better candidate, why is a better candidate, is the sourcing tool now being able to evaluate for AI wordings and the way the sentences are written. Like that's going to be, in my opinion, that's a new phase of like all these sourcing tools as well. Like, can you determine if this is human written or this is ChatGPT written, for example, right? Because every resume is starting to sound the same. And so I think for me, like, again, like it's not in the near term, there's always going to be a human oversight, and that's going to be required. I feel like in our job, that's always going to be the case. We are a people team at the end of the day. When I'm extending an offer, and Matt and Anita can speak to it, an AI cannot do that. Like I am literally being like, who is that decision maker? Oh, your family. Okay, like what are they really looking for? Your words, your modulations. I feel like that's still a very long-term thing from an AI to do. And for the individual on the other side to feel very comfortable with that. Like, it's not just like us as the people delivering that. It's like, how is the candidate and employee experience going to be? Like, that is something that we also have at the same time have to keep in mind. Like, right now, am I going to feel comfortable like negotiating an offer with an AI? No, probably not. They're not understanding where my pain points are. Whereas a human will, and we see that right now. So yeah, I think it needs to be a valuable resource add requiring minimal oversight. That's when it's going to become a good product.
Yeah, something you mentioned, Priyam, over there, right? Keyword-based matching or keyword-based filtering and all, which is what a lot of ATS systems tend to do, right? Now, if you go a little bit deeper into that, like why ATS would do that? You have a job spec with certain keywords, you have a CV with certain keywords, right? And I have seen personally in my working life before, many times recruiter will say, okay, make sure you have this keyword in your CV, otherwise we'll not put your CV through, right? To my mind, in this world, I don't think there is any place for the CV itself, as well as the job spec, in my opinion, right? Why? Because first of all, the companies are evolving. They're changing a lot more faster than we can think, right? Particularly startups and scale-ups. You are hiring somebody to do a certain job or certain task, but within few months, that job spec or that task or that role will change. It will evolve as you are evolving as a company or as a team, right? So then the job spec, which is like a static version, doesn't make sense anymore. It has to be a dynamism behind that. Mm-hmm. And that's not something you can capture within a piece of paper, right?
So Malik, the job description and resume is a signal. Yeah. It creates the need for the conversation. Okay. It's important because it actually does help us calibrate for the alignment of the role match to the candidate. And it's really truly only important if the candidate and organization are unknown to each other. Now, if AI was able to be really smart and crowdsource all of our networks and actually cluster to a finely tuned, like, these are the roles of organizations that have open roles for you that are matched for you. And by the way, that does not exist. But if it did, it would make a lot of money because people like myself and Matt and Priyam, I'm guessing, would want to jump on that because right now we're in a market that is like referral driven. It's who you know. And they can speak so much better than what our resume, our profile can show, because they can actually say, they can pick up the phone and say, I'll tell you all about this candidate and what they've been doing and then why they were so successful in their role here at this organization. And that brings credibility that the resume or job description or LinkedIn profile cannot give. It's actually interesting to me because our LinkedIn profiles have reviews, but we don't put that into like a currency. And it should, like, there should be a currency to how someone's footprint not only grows, but also the reviews, how much they contribute in posts, their articles contributed, things like that. That should be a currency that actually speaks to their ability and capabilities more so than what they could write on a job description. If you talk to people and especially those who land new jobs, they will probably tell you they spent very little time in their interviews talking about whatever they wrote on their resume. If the conversation was organic enough and aligned, they're talking a lot about stuff that actually never landed on the resume, but they had to put just enough onto this document to get seen, just to give a signal to say, I want to have a conversation with this candidate, or vice versa. But I say vice versa because it's equally important. We're missing a whole candidate experience here. Is you've got to attract the candidate to the organization too. It's not just going to be employer led here. The candidate, there are still a lot of candidates withdrawing from, selections these days and turning down offers. And so that's important to note that you do want to have a talent brand, and the job description is part of that advertisement. It's part of that billboard to attract candidates to the website to show like, hey, yes, they're actually hiring. And that's a valuable point because I talk a lot about reverse recruiting, and that's finding a role, like it's kind of a go-to-market strategy, finding a role that's not even on the market, like a hidden job market. And people say, well, why is this useful? And I'm always saying, like, because you want to get it ahead of it before it's posted so that you're seeing, and that's important. And that's one of the frustrations right now in this market today is there's thousands of candidates. So by the time it's posted, they already have a few in mind, right? And so that's where the candidate wants to get their signal in, or vice versa. The employer wants to get their signal to a top candidate before they post it. So that's where you're right. The job description may not have much merit, but it does.
Okay.
It's still a baseline to build from, right? And that's what I think. I think like it's just a way to like find those key important base things that you need. Like if I need someone with C++, like I need to put that on my job description to track that candidate. But from then on, if you can't talk about what the challenges are, what those future projects look like, which you talked about, like, hey, is this person going to be fit for my next 2 to 5 years product line and my like product roadmap? Then obviously that's what the interview process is for. But I feel like there is some baseline needed, which a job description and resume give. How well they give, now that's a whole nother story. And how well they establish that is a whole nother ballgame. Yeah.
Good. I again want to throw a curveball to all of you. Okay. Now we talked about referrals here. That okay, if I know somebody in this company, I may wanna get myself hunted within that, right? Similarly, a lot of time, even internally, you have a lot of referrals coming in the company, and you would also hear terms like okay, hire for the culture and so on, right? However, there is a Harvard study where it says that hiring for culture is probably one of the most like a disguised way of discriminating people, right? And this I have faced. So one of the clients we have been working with, they had a job spec. We had the perfect candidates for them, and they could do everything that they could do, like technical tests, everything passed. They rejected the candidate only because they were like, oh yeah, but he's not from a particular culture, and our existing developers are from that culture, right? There was no other reason given to us.
That's
right.
That's like a built-in bias coming in,
Right.
but
Yeah.
a culture fit or ad is important in terms of, are they going to work well with my team? Are they going to integrate seamlessly with my team? And are they going to continue to encompass what we're building together? Like, but yeah, just having a preconceived notion, that is a bias that is always there in every single person. But how do you work on that? There's so many trainings around. I feel like it's another issue to solve for, but it's just really hard.
Yeah. Do you think AI has a play here?
I think so, but very little. It's interesting because in so many organizations, they've yet to define what their culture actually is. They've also yet to define what their talent bar looks and feels like. And they've yet to actually define what their candidate experience looks and feels like. And I kind of feel like if you can't actually speak on those, you can't really speak on if there's bias or not, and plug in AI for that. Now, somewhere in there, we should be talking about values and mission. But what also none of us have said outright, and I'm just going to be bold and say it, is a lot of these conversations of assessing culture, it's also because there was maybe a person in that role in the past, or maybe several people, where they did not hit it out of the park. There were things that now that it's open, they're trying to make sure that they don't have another challenge. Or maybe it's because that person wasn't ready to scale them to the stage that they're at now. And so now they're looking for a skill set that's a different fit in the culture. It's looking ahead as opposed to what we need right now. And so that's a different way of saying it too, is culture is very, very, there's a lot of shades of gray. And so we have a hard time defining it. So we say culture fit, culture ad. And that's where, again, resumes come into the playing field, because then people feel a risk mitigation. They say, oh, well, this person went to this school, so I feel a little bit better. Or this person worked at this org and they've scaled it to this, so I feel a little bit better. But if we could just put the resume upside down and have a very good conversation, make it collaborative, and actually do an assessment, not an assessment like a test, but like a technical assessment or collaborative assessment where it's free form, where we're not following any frameworks, we're not following any playbooks, we're just having a collaboration in free form of, this is a problem that we're seeing at our organization today. How would you solve it? And that's taking critical thinking. Now, AI could help brainstorm in critical thinking, but it cannot solve the problem.
Cool, wonderful. Another part of this whole HR tech or the talent acquisition stack, one segment that I'm currently witnessing a lot of change is basically technical vetting or take-home test, right? A few years back, it was very common that, okay, here is the task, go home, do this. Once you're ready, we'll take you to the next stage, right? But right now we know that a lot of candidates tend to cheat on it, right? Even during the live interviews, they are like cheating. They're having an AI answering the questions or generating the responses for them, right? What do you think? Do you guys still use vetting, remote vetting, or take-home test as part of your process? What are you guys looking out for?
Matt, you want to tackle that one first?
Yeah, I got two things I want to add to this. One, I think everybody should be paid if they're being asked to do these assessments, because I think that's not normal in our culture, but I think if we're asking someone to do 5 hours of work, they need to be compensated for that, and it's unfair that we're not doing that. So that's like, I feel very strongly about that, and I don't see any companies going that direction at the moment. The other piece, yeah, no, I'll just leave it there. I'm curious about that for you guys. Have you experienced that? Okay,
I'm pretty passionate about that topic too. I actually wrote an article about technical assessments, and I posted onto LinkedIn maybe over a month or two ago. And I gave some recommendations of where technical assessments can go. So I invite people to go find that through my profile to go for a deeper dive. And I even include a sample email or like language as to how you could use an AI policy, so that if you're feeling like you need to put some guardrails on AI usage, that you're able to do so. I actually have a stance that you should use the technical assessment or take-home assignment as a day in the life of the organization, and it should be an open problem, so it's open for critical thinking. So while you could use AI again as your brainstorming partner, it can't solve it. And if you have a way to take that conversation and then take it to the on-site or by video to actually press them further, then you're verifying. You're verifying the technical assessment usage and seeing how their thought process is being applied here. Whether they do 30 minutes or 8 hours is on the candidate. I do think it's a good idea, like Matt says, to pay, but whether people are going to take 30 minutes or 8 hours, it's then about the critical thinking. And that's something, I think that's the value here, not so much of did they get it right or wrong, because there's been so many times that candidates get almost there if they just had a nudge. Right. And I feel like that nudge is important, because in real life, it's not always about right or wrong. We have nudges, we have collaborations, we have room for mentorship.
Yeah, I've pushed back on that a few times. So I've had companies in the past where we did each role, each company, each team's take-home assessment and vetting culture, or not culture, I shouldn't say culture, style is very different. So what they're asking for, right? So when I've done certain ones that required a lot more time, where it was like, hey, you're actually you're doing something that is going to require about, maybe 6 to 8 hours of time, I will give them a week to 2 weeks. Like, I've pushed back with hiring managers on that. Be like, listen, people have full-time jobs and they have a personal life, and we need to accommodate for that. So I will always tell candidates, like, please, we expect you to put in an hour or so every day. That's up to you how you want to divide your time, but I'm going to give you a week and a half that seems possible. If you do require extra time, do let me know. But I always want to make sure, like, what happened? Like, did you just wait till the last minute? Because that also talks about your priority. But if you need an extra day, like I'm always towards the end, I'm just writing up my document, that's fine. I'll give you an extra day. So that's a different one. But, I've had technical assessments where we're really assessing for cognitive, like how are you thinking outside the box, or purely from a coding perspective, which I do feel like can be really useful in certain cases, where if I'm hiring for someone who's a really valuable and strong coder, I don't want to waste the hiring manager's 45-minute technical screen prior to doing that, because their time is just as valuable, if not more, for the business, right? So I feel like there's a lot of good tools out there that will, so we currently, like, there's certain things, but like currently in the past, we've done like a 45-minute, that's all it takes. It takes about 40 to 45 minutes. It will, like, record your screen or record yourself. I've seen a lot of AI guidelines that have come out where if we're doing even a phone screen that's virtual, you can't use headphones because, people will put on AirPods or something and the AI speaking, but they're answering, so you can't really tell, like, what the headphones are connected to. So there's been a lot of conversations, which I do see a lot more AI guidelines on different types of assessments that are happening. They'll look for if they're working on a coding assessment, for example, they'll see their eye contact to see like, is it moving? Are they referring to different thing? So I actually am very passionate about that in the sense of making sure that it's take the time beforehand. Like this is the type of question that will be asked, and making sure the question is just not, it's useful. So luckily, the good thing that we're doing at my current company is like all the questions being asked are very relevant to the work that they're actually going to be doing. It's not just a standard lead code, right? And so like, hey, please assess for this. Take 30-40 minutes prior. Just whatever you need to do to get acquainted. And then when you start, unfortunately, you can't stop. Like I make sure the introduction says all of that so they are ready to go. And if they're like, I'm sorry, like I just wasn't able to get through it, or I read something wrong, I'm going to give them the benefit of doubt depending on where they are, what happened. Like we're humans at the end of the day. So I think clear directions and pushing back with your hiring managers on what they're looking for and how valuable and cognitive it is just as important. But I do see value in them, and defining those guidelines is going to become more and more and more important as we continue in the AI world.
Cool.
I
Wonderful.
actually like it when candidates use AI. I think it's,
Yeah.
I want it on almost every job description at this point. If they don't know how to use this technology, now if they use it to the point where I'm like, what are you talking about? You're just regurgitating something that I clearly understand. You don't know what you're talking about.
Exactly.
That's a problem.
Exactly.
If you use it as if you're like a manager and you say, hey, go out and get me this information and I'm going to distill it and I'm going to present it in a really coherent way, and I got it to you really fast and really clean, why are we punishing someone for that?
Right.
So there's a lot of mixed feelings in that space.
I think it's also a little bit sometimes can be like, well, is it them, like, did they think outside the box first before utilizing AI to build on their thought, or did they just come back and then are really good speakers who made it sound like their own? So like that nuance of like figuring out is where kind of that like we're kind of stuck in the middle of that, right? That's what it feels like.
Did you see that new study that came out where cognitive decline if they go through
Yes.
versus I don't know how true or what. Yeah, I didn't read the full article, but it sounded like if you think about a problem and then go to ChatGPT, your brain neurons are going to fire a lot more, and that makes sense.
Right. Okay. We've been talking about a lot of concerns here, like biases, take on tasks and all those things, right? Where do you guys see the opportunities with this whole new AI world? Where do you think it could be the most impactful for you?
It's a big question.
Yeah, I think it's going to change every single job. I think 50, maybe 60% of all of our jobs in the for over the next 5 years. I think everything's going to change, and we're going to get more responsibilities in a different way. We're going to lose a lot of jobs that we have right now. That scares me, and like, what is that going to look like in the job market? We are going to gain some, and we don't know what they are, but that's where I think it's going to take away. There's an example I give at IBM. They implemented in 2017 a HR bot, basically. So they're well ahead of the game. They were able to take 600 HR folks who were attached to executives and shift them to strategy. And now the executive goes right to the bot first for how do you transfer this employee? How do you do the little things? I think that's going to be across the board in every department. Things like that is going to change. So we'll see. I'm curious.
Yeah. I think it's going to be valuable in upskilling and learning and development, because I think every single one of us is going to have to upskill and learn new skills in this new era of AI and how it's going to change the scope of our roles. I think where I'm the most concerned is not on us, but like the new grads. Like if someone was to ask me today, like, Anita, what would you say or suggest that I tell my son or daughter, to study when they go to university? I wouldn't know. Like, there's not a major that really stands out to me. But if I was asked years ago, I would have said this, this, and this. Now, if there was like an entrepreneurial study, I would say that, because I feel like that's where people are headed. However, the failure rate of entrepreneurs have also gone down. So I feel like we need to come up with something that kind of steadies the market a little bit more and gives a little bit easier entry for especially like the new grads. because as I think, especially of the talent acquisition, I've always loved campus recruiting. I've always felt like the universe relations, not only is it a pipeline, but it's always so fun to see the interns every year and to give the projects and see what comes out of it and the fresh perspectives. And that's kind of going away. We've already seen in the last 5 years, the intern programs shrink since COVID. Now it's almost negligible. I mean, it's hard to see where it's going to be in the next 5-10 years.
Okay.
I tell the people the same thing. Like when I'm talking in my community group or people come for any sort of advice, I'm like, just try to upskill yourself as much as possible, whether that's just talking to more people and see what they're doing. Just try to get out in the community a little bit more. We're all learning from each other as well, and learn about these new tools. Just don't write something on your resume. Actually know what the tool is, because let's be honest, like you're not going to get the job if you've just put something on your resume, right? So I'm like, just try to do demos, learn about it, ask questions, because that's going to make you knowledgeable, where you can answer questions like, hey, what are your challenges that you're facing in recruiting right now? This, and this. Okay, well, you know what? I actually spoke to these two tools, which I feel could be a great value add for you. Have you, talked about them or thought if they could be a good fit for your company? So even if it's as basic as that, try to upskill yourselves, really focus on data. I feel like recruiting and HR is really getting heavy into data to see, because we're not measuring for efficiencies in the past. We're only now measuring for efficiencies now that we've implemented AI. So now, of course, it's like, hey, it's going up, but like, is it really going up? Like, do you know where it was prior? So getting yourself really familiar with data, I think is very important. Like your pass-through rates, and a lot of companies just don't do that well. The data is very skewed. So I feel like a lot of those areas is going to be very important. And yeah, I don't think I could tell people like what to go to school for anymore. I think like we gotta wait like 10 years at least to figure out how the dust settles. But at least in the Bay Area, a lot of people are going to be impacted because we are in the center of technology, right? This is where everything grows out of. We're going to see that explosion first, whereas the rest of the world sees the ripple kind of over the years, in my opinion. So if you're an engineer, great. Just maybe don't come to Silicon Valley. Just go somewhere else, because those companies are still going to need engineers, where here AI might be doing a lot of that work.
Okay, cool. I would love to continue as much as I can, right? But I know you all are busy. We are coming towards the end of our hour. And before wrapping up, I would like to ask you all, if you, let's say, put yourself in my position like a founder, and if you were to come up with like one tool, one solution with the use of AI that you could do to make your life easy, what would it be?
I love that question.
All right. It could be internal facing, external facing, employer or candidate facing, whatever. It could be compliance, whatever.
It would be internal for me, but I don't know if there's one tool, because there's so many like broken verticals or things missing in each vertical, whether that's capacity for hiring, or whether that's like efficiency for hiring, or failures for hiring, sourcing for hiring, engineering teams recognizing their needs and skills gaps for hiring versus business needs, right? There's just so many things that are cracked that I'm not sure if there's an encompassing one tool. And if there is, I feel like it's really far. And I feel like that's where smaller companies that are doing pieces of it, those acquisitions will come in to kind of start encompassing that into one big, large tool. So I can see like a company like Workday in the future called something else, that they are solving for 7 out of 10 of the problems that the people team is facing, because they've maybe done smart acquisitions, but of the smaller companies, because there's only so many small companies that can withstand that time too. But I don't think there's one encompassing tool. There's just so many different areas that are currently cracked, in my opinion.
Cool. Anita?
So founders, they tend to always act like the roof is on fire today. And so because of that, they tend to only focus on the problems today in their current view. And those fires emerge because we didn't put the systems in place back when. And that starts really putting in the right talent very, very early. Like your first 5, 10, 50, 100 hires are the most critical for this reason. Because the fires today, really point to the decisions we made 6 months, 1 year, 5 years ago, right? And so my recommendation is getting the right people in early from a strategy level and systems thinking, including bring your people leader in, bring your talent leader in early, like early, before you feel like you need them, to set those the recruiting foundation and getting all this set up. And then really focus on what the skills are needed for the roadmap tomorrow, not today, because that ship has sailed. Like we'll solve it, don't you worry. But that's the thing, is we worry like just today, but what we need to do is work on the talent needs of tomorrow. When I say that, and I'm sure my peers here are going to shake their heads, is the job rec comes in and it's always about like, I need this yesterday, I need this person to solve this problem right now today. And the reality is, by the time we find this person and then we get them started and onboarded, it's like 3 months later. And then we're solving for something else 6 months later. And guess what? We no longer need them. And then we're doing layoffs. And these poor people are being yo-yoed through the marketplace, right? And so we have to focus on 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years down the road, and what we need for that problem to be solved. And that's where the fear lies, because we're uncertain. We don't quite know, but there is certain things that we can figure out, knowing enough about the product and where it's moving. And it allows us to make pivots and recognize we're not perfect, but we rely on the team and potential to figure it out as we go. So when that roof comes on fire again and we can solve the problem for yet the next today, we have the potential and the right people to say, we could solve it. We've laid down the systems.
Matt, anything to add?
Yeah. First of all, I see a note in chat. Can you hear me all right? Is there?
Yes.
Okay, good. You asked if there was like one thing for a founder to do. And right now, I think the number one thing to do is create a culture of curiosity within your company. And then from there, the actual physical thing to do is create an internal bot with your data right now. Like, it's so easy to have a ChatGPT folder for marketing, or to use Gemini, and to take that unstructured data and then have the curiosity of your team talking to it, thinking through. Like, most of the time, people don't know what their company is doing half the time. So out of there, everybody's complaining about silos, and now we have the full opportunity to say, hey, this is what marketing's working on, because you can ask a bot and it'll tell you exactly what the last 5 marketing campaigns were.
That'd be so cool.
We have a real opportunity here to reduce those silos if people are curious. So that's my 2 cents.
Cool, wonderful. Thanks a lot, guys, for wonderful tips. But before we learn, I promise this is the last one I'm going to ask. Okay. What would be your top tip for any hiring managers out there who are currently scaling? Right, let's start with you, Matt.
Sorry, I was hoping someone else would answer, because what is the top what?
Top tip. If you have to give one tip to any hiring managers.
I would stop being so scared. Nobody knows what's going to happen in the world. So, like, just go for it. I want to see more. I want to see boldness again. I miss it. And
I'm adding to what Matt's saying. The fear is real right now, and it's starting with the founders. We're leading with fear, and it's seeping down to individual contributors. And that's not the way to lead an organization, but it's also how we're leading our society right now. Globally, this is fear is just such a big thing right now. And I see it everywhere. I literally was in a forum the other day, and I'm like, wow, people are cracking right now. They're really cracking. And this is a real phenomenon. Like, I see it on LinkedIn. It's toxic. People are cracking. And I think we need to like get back to being vulnerable and just showing like, hey, this is what I'm afraid of, and talk it through, because that builds trust. Being vulnerable and talking through builds trust. And it's a right to say, you know what, I really, really, really want to make this hire, and I really like this candidate, and I really want to move forward, but I'm afraid. And to also say, you know, I'm afraid too, but let's go for it. And if it doesn't work, then we'll brace for it when it doesn't. You know, that's okay too, because sometimes the candidate also says it's not working later, and it's a mutual decision. Let's not like worry about the what ifs.
I'm going to add to that. I think it's important to take some risks, calculated risks, essentially, because I feel like at some point there is that attrition rate and ROI of like time spent for hiring and all that, and resources are time and money that's the TA team has spent, and then the engineering team has spent on that individual candidate. So I understand that risk is important, but let's not. My tip is like, if you find a good candidate that is hitting 8 out of 10, and it's like, let's be honest, like 10 out of 10, probably possible to find, but that's what they're looking for, especially in the macroeconomics right now. What I feel like is, if you're finding a really good person, hire them, because I think the mentality right now is like, I think there's someone better out there, and then we lose that opportunity. So my biggest tip is, if you find someone, bring them on, because it's probably going to be harder to get them engaged after, because you've moved on from them if they've landed somewhere else. So I think my biggest tip is, find the right person that don't think like there's someone better out there. This is not a dating game. Like, you know, let's not make it speed dating. Let's, like, if you're finding someone, like, try to build that relationship, like vet them throughout that interview process correctly, and then, you know, let's close them.
Cool. Wonderful. Thanks a lot, guys, for wonderful tips. Great discussion about the HR stack in general, you know, the biases, the remote assessment, you know, the things that we should be looking out, where are the opportunity lies, you know, what should, progressive TA teams should do in this world of AI. I think that was very insightful discussion from all of you. And thanks a lot for making this time and being the first one, first guest on our inaugural, HR panel. So thanks a lot, and thanks a lot for putting trust in me to run this.
Yeah.
So I think it's about time we wrap up. We are doing well on the time, so I'm glad we managed to wrap this within the time we had. And once again, have a wonderful Friday. And looking forward to having more panels with you guys.
Yes. Thank you for the opportunity, Malik. It's been great.
Yes. Happy Friday.
Thank you. Happy Friday.
Thank you. Happy Friday. Happy Friday. Enjoy your summer. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.